It's Jessi. Welcome to another turning where I sometimes talk about books. I'm drinking some delicious homemade eggnog right now, and this is my third attempt to record this video. It's the end of the year, which means this is my favorite books of 2025. Actually, it's the start of 2026 when I'm recording this. Because what if I read my favorite book on December 31st? Anyway, it's been a while. In the middle of the year, my laptop just died. It stopped charging. I took it to shops and they did software fixes, they did hardware fixes, and it's still not charging. And honestly, my time and money was being much more committed to planning a wedding last year. So I just gave up. So hopefully you're seeing this, and hopefully sometime soon you'll see the July vlog that I put so much effort in and was 80% through editing when my computer died. But that's not today. Today we're being positive. We're talking about the books I loved. So I have some graphics that I made to help kind of organize my thoughts and also to give me something to do to procrastinate doing literally any real work the last week of school before winter break. And so on the screen now you are seeing my top 75 books of the year. And these are everything I gave like 3 stars or above. They are all good books that I would generally, if you're thinking of reading one and you want somebody to say, yeah, that was good, these are books you can do. If there's one there you spot and you're like, I'd like to know more, why was that here? Feel free to comment and ask me what I thought on Wilding Hall or Hampton Heights. If you want some more specifics, highlighted here are the 2025 releases that are in this group. Some of these I will be talking in detail about in a minute. Some of these I will not. Big surprise, Sunrise on the Reaping was good, you know. Going from there, I did what I do every year, which is I ranked the 4 stars and above. Now for me, when I rate a book out of 5 stars, I do it within like 48 hours of finishing the book. So it's more or less my immediate thoughts when I finish, when the book is fresh, based on whatever feelings I'm feeling at the moment. And so my favorite books, the best books, aren't always the ones that are the most highest rated. But I use 4 stars as a pretty good judge of like, this was good enough to recommend to people. So then I rank them. We have our bottom tier here. I simply do not recall. These are books that like, one of 2 things either happened. Either I looked at it and I went, I don't remember anything about that book. Or actually this year, very little of that. Actually what happened here more was, I gave that 4 stars. That's generally how I feel about Una Out of Order and Shark Heart. I was like, oh, really? Those are 4-star books? Whereas We Speak Through the Mountain and The Duchess War, they were definitely good books. I just like could not give you any detail about them. The Duchess War is kind of unfair because I wrote that entire series this year and I could not tell you which book was which, except for 2 of them, which are more highly rated on this tier list. Anyway, above that we have It's Aight. These are good books. These are books that I would recommend. These are books that if somebody was like, hey, what should I read? I might recommend one of these, but they're not ones that come to mind immediately. They're not books I loved. They're not ones that I feel a particular emotional pull towards, but they're good books. And then we get good food. These are books that are good food. I loved these. I liked them a lot. I would recommend them. If you were looking for something, these books would come to mind as ones I've read recently that are good, that are doing the thing you're looking for. I will pop up a different graphic here because I know it's a little hard to see them on the tier list, but basically any of these are books I would broadly recommend, maybe with some caveats. Like if I were to recommend The Buffalo Hunter to somebody, I'd probably make sure they know that this is more slow historical than it is big horror, you know, for example. But they are books that I would recommend in general. And then the top tier, which I'm not going to show you right now, are books I went feral for. These are the books I love. These are going to be my top 7 books of the year. I did spend some time trying to look at that good food category and see if there was anything I could bump up to round this out to an even 10, but I just couldn't quite make myself think, yeah, these deserve to be in my favorite books of the year. Good books, love them. Some of them, important books for literature. The Devourers, incredible. Do I get it? Not a bit. You know, I thought of adding 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart because an anthology is good to recommend. Every step she takes is beautiful. I love Alison Cochran with all my heart. But like none of them quite fit. These are my favorite books of the year. So I have a top 7 this year. Starting with number 7. It's actually one of the few I don't own physically. I don't buy very many books comparatively. And most of the books I own are ones after I read them and I love them. So these are all books that I thought were good enough to buy them afterwards, except for one. I'll talk about that when I get there. So number 7 is The Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Djeli Clark. The Dead Cattail Assassins are neither cats, nor do they have tails, but they are dead. This is about an assassin who works for a god. She made a deal while she was living that she doesn't remember, to, when she died, become immortal as long as she served this god. And the god she serves makes all of her people work as either assassins or chefs, something to do with knives. And this is just incredible world building. She is sent on an assassination quest mission, whatever, and something goes wrong. And she starts breaking rules that she really shouldn't be breaking. I really had a lot of fun with this. This is, of these, the one I don't have an immediate emotional reaction to. This is the one that I'm like, it's up here because it's good. This is a good book. Not a book that makes me personally go like, I'm going to die, you know? I just thought it was really good. P. Djeli Clark does this amazing world building in such a small package. He has such interesting things going on in this world. You have the gods that are kind of touched on, but never got really in detail. He does something I was going to mention, but I think is a spoiler. There's some neat stuff with stories and a holiday that's being celebrated. And he brings in Caribbean culture in a really fun way. And I just really liked this book. It's one I do want to reread because I feel like I read it too quickly. This is a theme of 2025 that has gone into what I'm doing in 2026 for reading. And I feel like I read it too quickly and didn't let it sink in. And I do want to reread this one and let it sink in. But incredible book. Highly recommend it. Number 6 is my only nonfiction of this list. It is So Many Stars, yes, by Cara de Robertis. I read a fiction by Cara de Robertis a couple of years ago and loved it. And then thought they hadn't written anything else because I kept looking up their dead name. So if you see me talk about the Condores anywhere, referring to Cara de Robertis by their dead name, please just let me know and I will add a comment or fix it because I didn't know and now I do. This, however, is a graphic novel, a nonfiction. It is, as it says, an oral history of trans, non-binary, genderqueer, and two-spirit people of color. This is de Robertis interviewing 20 queer elders and just telling their story. It is organized by topic, by subject. It is, it starts with, how did you know you were gender nonconforming? It's followed by things like, did you come out? And if so, how'd it go? If not, why not? It talks about things like physical transitioning. If you did, if you didn't, why not? Protest, the AIDS epidemic, and going on to where do you see the future? And it was just beautifully hopeful. It is full of so much charm, resiliency, which I know is kind of a dirty word when we talk about minority groups because it's a case of like you had to be that and you shouldn't have to, but it's full of that in a way that made me feel more hopeful and more empowered. And it's just really, really incredible. I loved the diversity of thoughts shared in this book, and there are a couple little things I could be critical of. I think I wish de Robertis had interjected their own thoughts or some kind of more background into some things. Like almost everybody ends up in San Francisco in this book. Why? I want to know why. And I do wish it had maybe been organized by person rather than by topic, but that's a choice that Robertis made, and I think it's a good choice. It's just not for my preference, but it's beautiful. I do want to reread. I'm going to say this a million times. I do want to reread this one because I read it by audio, and I do want to physically read it and mark it up and just really sink my teeth into it. But great book. Next up, we have a favorite author of mine. I believe every one of his books has been on one of my favorites of the year list since I discovered him, since I started reading his books. But that said, I pre-ordered this and I was still terrified to pick it up, and that is You Weren't Meant to Be Human by Andrew Joseph White. This is White's adult debut, and like I said, I was terrified to pick this up. I went to his release day author talk, and it's terrifying to me. This book is about Crane. Crane is a autistic trans man, and he lives in rural West Virginia with his abusive situationship. And then he works at a gas station, and oh yeah, he happens to be a member of a cult that worships this like writhing mass of worms and fly hive mind thing. It's gross, but honestly, the real horror of this isn't the worms. Worms are gross, but they don't really matter. Crane doesn't know this yet, but he's been pregnant for almost 3 months already. The pregnancy is the horror. And to get a little, I hate the idea of being pregnant. I want to have kids one day, and the fact that like having to be pregnant and give birth just disgusts and horrifies me. So I was terrified to go into this. And unexpectedly, I found myself seen by this book in a way nobody else talks about. And this is beautiful. White talks about that this book was kind of, he himself has always had this fear of pregnancy, but also that this was kind of written in a rage after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and that's dripping through the pages of this. That rage and that disgust is just on every page of this. And I don't know, Crane is supposed to be this like awful character, but also I found him incredibly relatable. And I don't know what that says about me, but it's true. And I don't know, I think this book is incredible. And the dread you feel through the whole thing. It's very quiet. That's a word I'm going to come up with a couple times. Quiet horror. I think that's what I like. I like a horror that's just kind of seeping dread, but mostly mundane. Like, this is, for all the weird stuff going on, this is really just Crane's day-to-day life dealing with this awful thing that is going on with him. And I think that's kind of beautiful. I don't know. I was really sucked into this book. And I don't know. I think it's beautiful. And I think I'm the only one that thinks that, Andrew Joseph White included. But this is the one of all the books I'm going to talk about I wouldn't recommend. I would, but I think this is obviously dealing with a lot of topics that I don't think a lot of people want to read about, very understandably. But I also think it's beautiful, and I don't know. This is personally, to me, such a good book. But I also know why nobody else would want to read it. It has gotten some controversial responses. Next up, number 4 is Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. This was a gift from a friend for last Christmas, and I read it pretty early in the year, and it is beautiful. So this is about Andrew. Andrew. I swear queer guys have like 3 names. Sorry, that was rude. I shouldn't have said that, but I swear. Anyway, this is about Andrew. He and his sister Dove are from Australia, but they attend a boarding school in the US, and they've just spent like a summer that was kind of awkward and weird, and they're back to school, and Dove is acting strange and not really talking to Andrew. And then he gets to school, and his best friend Thomas is also acting weird. He's not really talking to him. Thomas's parents have gone missing, and that's strange. And it's just weird, and Andrew's just trying to figure out what's going on, that his sister and his best friend, who he's maybe in love with, are so distant and so weird. And on top of that, Andrew writes stories. He writes creepy little short stories, and Thomas illustrates them. So throughout this book, you get these pages of Andrew's stories that are on these like other pages, but then you also get these illustrations of that Thomas draws to go with the stories. And one night, Andrew follows Thomas as Thomas sneaks out of bed and finds him fighting monsters in the forest outside of the school. That the monsters that Thomas is drawing based on Andrew's story are coming to life. This was good. It was so good. The horror in this is beautifully, evocatively described. It is botanical horror, which is, I think, a larger genre of horror, but largely I know from C.G. Drews. It is incredible, but the real beauty of this book is the yearning. The way Andrew talks about Thomas, the way he clearly feels about him. Here's a passage from very early in the book where Andrew is talking about how he doesn't show his stories to anybody and his sister's talking to them. They'd had this argument before, but Dove eyeballed him anyway. Our teachers handled Thomas's art, and he's a drama queen of the macabre. You could get extra credit if you wrote for a class. Or, hear me out, you could write something nice. To write something nice, he needed something nice to say. But his ribs were a cage for monsters, and they cut their teeth on his bones. That's the kind of writing you're getting in this. But also, Andrew is ace. And you know me, if something is ace, I give it like an extra star just for the heck of it, because I love that kind of representation. There's not nearly enough of it. And there's like not enough of it in YA specifically. And Andrew is ace in a way that I found incredibly relatable. There's a part towards the end where he kind of comes out to somebody. It's not spoilers. And his response is, they're talking about it. I think Andrew whispered, "It sucks to be ace." I think Lana said, "The world sucks for making you feel that way." And I sobbed on the metro on the way home reading that. So that's how I feel about that. Next book, number 3. If you sense like a theme, I read a lot of queer books. I had that greater tier list. I have a list of so between these and that, there's 24 books on the list, and I think 3 of them feature cishet heroes. Incredible. The Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Caruso. This is number 3. This is, God, how do I even explain this? We have Kimbrel Thorne is on maternity leave. She's just had a baby. She loves her baby, but it's her first day out of the house since having this girl. Her sister's over babysitting, and she gets to go to this New Year's party. It's not called New Year's. What do they call it? Year turning. It's the year turning party. But her boss is there, and her boss is like, "So when are you coming back to work?" And somebody that she's kind of on opposite sides of at work is like, "So are you retiring now that you have a child?" And she just wants people to leave her alone and let her enjoy a couple hours without her kid. But she also kind of feels guilty for wanting to be away from her kid. And on top of it, her rival. So she is not a cop, but kind of a cop, a detective, star investigator. And there is a thief type character. It's complicated in the world, but who is kind of her rival, usually an informant, but sometimes they end up on opposite sides. It's a real Batman, Catwoman thing going on. She's also there, and that's complicated because before Kem went away on maternity leave, they had a weird falling out that was very strange, and so that's weird. And then stuff gets weirder. So part of Kimbrel's job is they live in this world with echoes. So they live on the surface, and then there are these echoes that get deeper and deeper. And each echo deeper you go, things get weirder. The laws of nature melt away more and more. And Kem specializes in diving into these echoes to retrieve lost things. Things sometimes slip between these echoes, children and pets especially. She's never gone more than 4 echoes deep. And suddenly she and this kind of Catwoman-esque woman are diving deeper and deeper into these echoes to prevent something possibly catastrophic from happening as the year turns. And I love this. This is incredible. The world building is insane. I already have the sequel. I went out and bought it around Christmas time. I will probably read that hopefully soon. It's just so weird, but also the game that's being played is beautiful, and the relationship between these 2 characters is so incredible. It's sapphic, it is weird, it is fun, it is poignant, and I can only imagine how much harder all of this would have hit if I was also a new mother. So this is on a list of books, and the list is currently 1 book long of this is for my maternity leave because I want to have this book make me sob when I think about my own motherhood when I become one. Next up, number 2 on this list. The rest of this list is pretty firm. I feel like 2 or 3 could shift, but I think 2 kind of had a bigger emotional impact on me. It was more of a right time book, so the time that I read it really hit hard. And that's going to be The First Bright Thing by J.R. Dawson. This is a book that has been on my list forever. It probably appeared at a list sometime around the time I read The Night Circus as being another circus whimsical book. But for some reason, I had myself convinced it was YA, so I kept putting it off because I read YA so seldomly. But I finally read it this year in a vlog I don't think you saw, where I just read whatever Libby Holds came in. And, oh boy. This is about Wren. She's the ringmaster of a circus, and her circus is full of sparks. Sparks are people that have a special ability of some sort. But in the world, these abilities are kind of looked down on. People kind of get rounded up for having these in a, very X-Men-esque way. But she has swindled a pass out of things, so she's allowed to as long as all the people are working in her circus. So her and her circus travel around. She and her circus travel around trying to find people that need them. And sometimes those people are sparks. Sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they join the circus. Sometimes they don't. But early on in this book, Wren is suddenly aware that she is dangerously close to being tracked down by the circus king, who is a mysterious figure, and we start learning more about their past. We have these flashbacks, but also one of Wren's co-workers, compatriots, friends, is a woman that can see the future, and she's seen something terrible coming. This book takes place between World War I and World War II. Sparks kind of manifested in World War I for some reason. It doesn't matter. And they are starting to see visions of World War II. And Wren becomes obsessed with having to prevent that future. And the thing about this is this book is full of hope. It was kind of a theme for me, was dread and hope. And although I will say, I actually found You Weren't Meant to Be Human weirdly hopeful, and that's another hot take. But anyway, neither here nor there. It's full of a lot of hope. We have this kind of found family. Wren has her wife, who is the trapeze artist, who is, I love her. But also the other members of the circus that are all her family. And it's just beautiful of this world they have carved out, but they aren't just satisfied carving out a world for them to live in. They aren't just settling for we are safe. They are trying so hard to make the world at large better. And it was beautiful. But the reason this hit me hard at the time that I read it, Wren is Jewish, but she's not super connected to her Jewish heritage. She, she learned some prayers from her mom, but she doesn't really celebrate the high holy days. She doesn't really celebrate any of the holidays, follow a lot of the traditions. And I read this when I was in the process of converting to Judaism. It has been a long time coming for me. Weird time to finally pull the lever on that one, but it is what it is. And there was something about the way Wren talked about being Jewish, about it doesn't matter if I don't know all the words to the songs. It doesn't matter if I don't pronounce the prayers correctly. That really just hit me. And then again, it just was just so full of hope and joy and love. And it's one of the few books that I wanted to buy. I don't really want to buy The Dead Cattail Assassins, but I really need a copy of The First Bright Thing so bad. I would put this next to Thistlefoot. I think those two are books I would recommend in tandem in a heartbeat. Because I think they work together really well. And finally, let me pause for a drink. Finally, my number one book of the year is Private Rites by Julia Armfield. I read this book. This was the second or third book I read this year. And I think I said at the time in my January wrap-up, the few wrap-ups I actually got, if you're worried about Florence, no, I haven't. I have 3 months on her. I did March and then I stopped. I might try to finish her this year. We'll see what happens. But anyway, I read this, and I think in my January wrap-up, I said, I think this might be my favorite book of the year. And it is. Nothing has unseated this. I read this book, and I got to the end, and I immediately rewound the audiobook and started over. And I listened to it at like half the speed I had listened to it the first time, because it was like, I need to, what? What? So this is, in theory, this is a King Lear retelling. Technically, sure, it's about 3 daughters grappling with the death of their father. But I think that kind of does this a disservice. That's not really what this book is about. It's not about divvying up a kingdom or anything like that. We have 3 sisters. Oh, where is it? Isla, Irene, and Agnes. Agnes is a half-sister for the first 2. And they are, at the start of this novel, they are quite estranged. They are estranged from each other. They are estranged from their father. When the oldest, Isla, gets news that their father has died and has to reach out to her sisters to let them know. And this is a book about mourning, but like in a strange way. It's about grieving for somebody you don't actually feel any grief towards. Somebody you don't you know you should feel something over their death, but you don't. It's about these sisters reconciling with the fact that they should have been closer than they were, and the fact that they aren't as close as they could have been was manufactured. But it's also about this beautiful family of being around the people that know you better than anybody else, but they also know you at a moment. They don't necessarily know who you are now, they know who you were. And they're dealing with their outside relationships. Isla's just been divorced. Irene is dealing with her partner and the transition they're going through. Agnes has just kind of met somebody that maybe she actually wants to settle down with. So that's wrapped up in this. And in the background, you're dealing with a world that is a little strange. We are in England, but it's wet. It's just constantly raining. There is flooding. People don't have access to food the same way that we do because of this constant rain. And there is just, people view the world differently because of this. And that I think is incredibly beautiful and symbolic. It just makes the whole thing, like I said, quiet. There's something about it being just a little more atmospheric and almost gothic, but not. And this is also very day-to-day. This is technically horror, but there's nothing particularly scary about it, but there is just kind of a feeling of dread throughout the whole book. But mostly we are dealing with this relationship between these sisters and between the other people in their lives, and them really reconciling with the fact that their father is dead. And is there something they should have done before that moment? Is there something they're supposed to do now? And what is the legacy that he has left behind for them? And I don't know, it's just beautiful. And I don't know if I'm selling it. I feel like there is a particular person that's going to love this book, and I think it's more for literary fans than it is for horror fans. I think maybe a sci-fi person could really get into this. But I think it's incredible. And I cried, and I really want to read it again, like right now, all the time. Plus, this cover is like the beautiful, like matte covers, and I just adore it. Anyway, those are my favorite books of the year. These are 5 of the 7 that are my favorites. Like I said, I have a pretty solid list of 17 more that I think are good books that are worth reading. And I think if you have tastes similar to mine, you might enjoy. And that's going to be it from me for this. Like I said, let me know down below if you think I should do a least favorites. I will be doing a YouTube favorites, although that might come out even later than normal this year because of how I'm structuring my reading in 2026. And let me know what your favorite books of the year were. What are some things you read in 2025 that really resonated with you, that you fell in love with? That's going to be everything from me. I love you.